It's good to see you guys. I hope there's some familiar faces in here. I've been looking at the names to see if I recognize some of you guys from previous sessions, and hopefully there's some new folks. There's going to be a little bit of uh, refresh or a little review of what we've done before, but mainly what we really wanted to do today was get you guys asking questions, anything to do with LinkedIn, not just your profile, but how to use LinkedIn. I would like to kind of contain it in that box because that is the topic. But anything LinkedIn is fair game, and if I don't know the answer, I'll find out for you and get to you. I want to apologize up front if I go into coughing fits. I am recuperating from a pretty serious upper respiratory infection, so if you hear it a little bit in my voice, I'm hopped up on Dayquil so that I could hopefully make it through this session. All right, so I have a couple of slides that I want to introduce. And again, you guys can start putting questions in at any point. And I think Joanna's going to
So the detergent was?
Somebody's not muted.
I don't know. I'm about to pick some today.
Okay, did we get, oh, we got it. Okay. All right, let me get my slides up here. All right. Let me get, there we go. All right. So we want to talk about an outstanding, a stellar LinkedIn profile today, and what does that constitute? What does good look like? All right, so the first question I want to talk about is, what are recruiters looking for in your LinkedIn profile? How do they find you or not find you? So this is going to be specific to folks who are in job search, but just know that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to be useful for anybody who is trying to network on LinkedIn, who is building their career, whatever it may be. So let's talk first of all, if a recruiter receives your resume, so you have applied for something, they're going to most likely vet you across social media before reaching out for an interview. They're definitely going to do that at some point, and increasingly I think they're doing it before they ever start the process with you. And it's very important to understand that what they are looking for, and this is going to vary depending on the field that you're in and the level that you're at, but in many cases, they're looking for the presence of positive content and not just the absence of negative, right? So I think we're all past, and certainly LinkedIn, we're not in the habit of putting our bad behavior in picture form on LinkedIn. So that's not so much what we're talking about, but they want to see, and this next bullet really speaks to that. Who are you connected to? If you're in sales, are you well connected to potential customers that they might want you to approach for this next job? Are you well connected with your industry? Are you considered a thought leader? They just want to see if you're engaged and if you are networking. And if recruiters are looking for someone with your qualifications, one of the questions I get a lot is, how do they find you? And I think it's really important to understand how the recruiter's profile, the professional profile that they have, what tools they have available to them so that they can find people like you. So one of the ways, and if you think about this, you can, when you go to find somebody, if you're looking for someone who has a certain credential, not a particular person, but someone who, let's just say you're looking for a resume writer like me, you probably, the search that you're going to do, you're going to come up with the people that you're already connected to first. So if a recruiter is already connected to you, you're going to show up high in their search. Now, I can definitely give you my opinions about looking for recruiters. It's a little bit like a needle in a haystack. But if you are connected to them, that you will come up high. The next thing that they might search on is your current job title. So if they're looking for someone to be let's say a marketing manager, a marketing director, then one of the things they can put in is current job title, marketing director, or again, marketing manager, something like that. Now, the reason that I said massage if necessary, I really want to make this really clear. I am never going to lie on anyone's resume, LinkedIn profile, or anything else. But sometimes we have to translate. You guys may have worked in companies, maybe you work there now, you probably had friends who have frankly weird job titles or job titles that are not representative of the work that they do. No one would ever search on that job title to find someone who does what that person does. So sometimes we have to do a little bit of translation to make it very clear. If you're the chief people officer, we probably want to say something about human resources in there. So it's that kind of thing, just a little translation. The next place that they can look for you is the skills section. So I want to spend a moment talking about that. You have the opportunity to put 50 skills maximum in that section, and I highly encourage you to do that. Now, what I want you to do when you fill that section out or update it is to think like a recruiter who is looking for someone like you. They are not going to be putting hardworking team player in there. They're going to be putting hard skills, competencies, credentials, those kinds of things. Now, here's what you need to know about that skills section. When you go in there and you're going to add a skill, let's say you are in marketing and you want something to do with marketing, developing marketing collateral, okay, which is all the printed stuff and the online stuff that marketers create. You want to start typing in marketing, see what drops down for you, and always select from one of the drop downs, because otherwise you're sort of speaking a different language than the recruiters will be speaking. So you want to look and see, okay, what are my options? Okay, here's marketing collateral. Maybe there's another one that you're trying to put in there and it's not exactly what you were thinking, but that's the closest option. So pick that one. So you may type in something like marketing and you may see 8 different possibilities that all work for you. Choose them all. That section, I highly recommend that you audit it annually once you get it set up the way you like it, because you're going to be developing new skills. There's going to be some skills that you're going to be really done with and not interested in continuing to promote yourself as, having that skill. So hopefully that made sense. Be sure to ask questions about that skill section if you have them. All right, now, one more slide before we go to our first breakout session. What are the most important components of your profile? I'm a broken record about the heading. So the heading is what goes right up underneath your picture, but that top box. You have 220 characters now. And what you can do and should never do is use the default of your current job title. So when you go to put in, let's say you get a new job, there will be a box I think it's automatically clicked. You have to unclick it to say use this job title in my heading. That is wasting your opportunity because you want to present your brand, not just what your current job title is. So that could be, if you're job searching, it could be maybe 2 or 3 job titles that are all very closely related that are what you're looking for. It could be skills that you have. It could be certifications. It could be a certain quality that you bring to the table. So when I'm writing LinkedIn profiles for my clients, I give them 3 potential headings that they can pick from, and I kind of come at it from different angles. Now, current job title. We talked about this just a minute ago. You want it to be aligned with the next job that you want as closely as possible. So what do you do if you aren't employed? So there is no current job title, or if you're making a pivot or a career reinvention where your current job title has nothing to do with what you're looking for next. So if you don't have a job title, you've got a couple of options. And one of them is don't be in a huge hurry to change your current job title. So if you've left a company, if it's a month, you're fine. We don't want to go 6 months with an old job title, then it says we still work there. But you can get by with letting that hang a little bit longer. So that's one option. You can also, they've added a section, and they call it career. I don't remember what they call it, career break or something like that. So you do have an option to plug in and say, currently traveling extensively or whatever you want to say. I'm not going to suggest that I think that's a great idea. It's going to be on a very much a situation by situation basis. But whenever possible, you want to try to align your current job title as much as you can with what you want next. Okay, education, very important, but not necessarily the dates. So you may want to take a look at your profile and see if it's time to take the dates of those degrees off if they're going to show your age. We talked about the skills. And then the about section. So I was just looking. I've got a client consult this afternoon, and I review everyone's resume and their LinkedIn profile prior to that consult. And I was noticing he didn't even have his about section. I'm going to pull up my profile. Most likely, I think you guys are going to have some questions, and I'm going to want to show you things, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So if you're like, well, I don't even know what that is a section that you'll have to add. So you go up to the top of your profile, and there's a button that says add a profile section, I think is how it's worded. And about section will show up. This is where you get to tell your story, right? You're telling it in first person. You're, talking conversationally like you were just telling your story to a colleague at the coffee shop. And you want to make that engaging. They will read that if it's interesting and it's not, run on sentences and huge blocks of text and all of that. And it may help the recruiter to make a decision to interview you. All right, now, do we have any questions, Joanna, before we go into our first break?
Yeah, we have a few. Someone asked, do you recommend using all 50 skills? Allow you to put.
Yeah, generally speaking, if you're in a really, so here's what I guess where I'm going with this is what I don't want you to do is reach, right? So if you feel like you've done all you can do because maybe you're in a very niched area, or maybe you're very junior and you don't feel like you can, go much beyond what you've already done and you've got 24 on there right now, I don't want you to force it, nor do I want you to put in, things that really don't apply to you or are off brand. But for those of you that are further along in your career, 50 shouldn't be too hard. It's actually surprisingly easy. So if you can, legitimately come up with 50, I do recommend it.
Awesome. Another question, for current job title, what do you recommend if you're trying to pivot to a new career?
Okay, I'd love to have that conversation with that person if they would be willing to come on, so I can be more specific.
Or can you unmute if you're comfortable, or if not, let us know in the chat.
It's Catherine. Sorry. So I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm not looking to pivot right now. I'm in a job that I'm very happy with, but I'm looking to potentially pivot to a totally different role. I'm in tech right now, and I'm thinking maybe eventually I might move into more of a consulting type position. So I guess the question is, as I get closer to making that decision to try to pivot, what would you recommend? Because the area I would be pivoting into is very different than what my current job role may be at the time.
Are you thinking consulting within IT though?
No, more like career coaching, leadership, that type, so totally different.
Okay. Are you going to have your own business at that point, or are you going to be looking?
Don't know yet. This is all very much in formulation.
Okay, so a couple scenarios there, the possibilities. So one thing, and I'm going to give a couple that don't apply to you also because it may help somebody else. If she were interested in consulting in IT, then what I would probably do is fit the word consulting in there in a kind of non-conspicuous way. One of the things I work with on clients is I think of it as a continuum of overt to covert. Where are we in terms of how loudly we can speak and can shout it from the rooftops that we're wanting to make a job change, a pivot, a career reinvention, whatever it may be. I've got clients on the one hand who are quite literally concerned that they will get fired if their employer gets wind, any sniff that they might be looking. And so we have to be very careful. I have other people where they're either out of work or the employer has said, yeah, you're leaving here in 30 days. And in the meantime, why don't you look for a job? They can be very overt about it, right? So that has to factor in as well. So that doesn't so much apply to you, but it may apply to somebody else. In your situation, Catherine, you're going to want to get a little bit more focused before you do that. And then also you're going to have that overt to covert thing to think about too. What I will tell you is I have some people in my life that I've worked with as clients who have a day job, but their whole LinkedIn profile is focused on this coaching business that they're building, or whatever kind of business it is. It often is coaching. I've got other folks where we sort of, split the difference. Like, here's my job title, but in the about section, right? And you can actually have both of them again, if you can be fairly overt. I'm this IT person. I'm also, a coach. And then you can talk about it in the about section. Hopefully you have a business so that you can have, in your professional experience section, you can have information about your business and information about the job that you have. So those are all kind of things to think about in terms of the coaching piece. When you get to that point where you're going to go out on your own or work for an employer, you kind of need to know which it is, because that's really going to affect how you present yourself on LinkedIn. So that's one kind of question you're going to want to have an answer to before you make that
Makes
change.
complete sense. Thank you.
Any follow-up questions there, or did I fully answer your question?
I have a question tagged to what you just told Catherine. Is it a possibility to have two different profiles? One
Great
for
question.
IT and one for her consulting?
No, they do not want you to have multiple profiles, and you'll start to get in trouble not in trouble, but you've got people that you want to connect with, and trying to get them to the right one, it would be a hot mess. So no, you do want one profile. Now, what Catherine is going to also want at some point in time, if she decides to have her own business, is a business profile. But that's a separate thing. But what I will tell you about my business profile, and this applies to anybody who is doing their own thing on the side. The only reason really at our level, and what I mean by that is if you're a solopreneur, you're kind of got a coaching business on the side or whatever it is, you want a business profile so that you can put your stuff on there about your business. And then now there's a logo, right? You have a business logo. And then if you've ever noticed on your personal profile, when you have all the different places that you've worked, you can find that company, right? It drops, so you start typing in Procter & Gamble, and it pops up with the logo for Procter & Gamble. You select that one, and then that shows up by your experience. Well, it'll do the same thing with your business, and you'll see that when we go to mine, my logo is right next to it. So it sort of legitimizes my business, right? So she's going to want one of those, but in terms of her personal profile, you can only have one. Was there any other questions, Joanna, before we move on?
There were a couple, but I do want to make sure that we have time for the breakout. So maybe we'll hold on to them for the end.
Okay.
So if you want to go into your breakout questions.
All right. So this is an and situation. I want you to ask answer both of these questions. So one of them is kind of current state. Are you getting recruiters reaching out to you now? If you're not actively job searching, you could still be having traffic. So I want you to talk about that. If you're job searching, are you getting a satisfactory level of recruiter traffic? I will tell you, and I sort of alluded to this a moment ago, my philosophy about finding recruiters on LinkedIn is that it's like looking for a needle in a stack of needles. I would rather you create this amazing LinkedIn profile that acts as, this is my term, recruiter flypaper, bringing them into you. So while you're out doing your job search activities and you're networking and doing all the things, recruiters are coming to you and you're not trying to find them. So what's going on with your recruiter traffic right now? And then I want you to commit to your group. And I used a week, if you need a month, whatever. But what is an area of your profile based on some of the things we've already talked about, where you've already identified, I think I can make a difference by changing or improving this section. So I want you to commit to your group what that will be. And hopefully y'all can kind of help each other with that.
You're all set.
And we had a couple of questions that we didn't get to, and I want to make sure we answer all the questions. So if there are more that maybe came up in your groups, be sure and put those in. I did want to hear a little bit from you guys about any ahas or, I don't know, anything unusual or interesting that came up in your group. Let me have it.
I think one thing that came up in our group is that when you're pivoting, I think it's really important. Sometimes you might not have had a deep dive into the duties that you want to be doing moving forward. And so sometimes you're like, how can I put those keywords in my profile if I haven't really excuse me, dove deep in those areas? And as I say to all of my clients, it's really important. It's okay to put it in your profile. And you can be creative with how you do that, whether you list it on the headline, which doesn't have to be just a title. It can be keywords, or peppering it in throughout your profile. Excuse me, sorry. But I think just recognizing that like those keywords are really important. And even though you haven't dove deep with them, if you've had a touch to them in some way, add them to your profile, because that's what recruiters are looking for in those instances.
Exactly. And it may be a matter of, you don't want to say expertise in. Maybe I was working on a client. In fact, I was doing the revisions on her resume this morning, and she's in banking risk, corporate banking risk. And there are 8, don't shoot me if I'm wrong on this, but I think she told me there was 8 areas of risk in kind of in the banking world. And she unusually has expertise in 5 of those areas. And I said to her, well, we want to put the other 3 in there. So what we said was expertise in the 5 areas, and then listed those out. And then we said further exposure to, so that we did get those other 3 in there. So it oftentimes is the qualifier that you use around that skill. So that good point, Sarah. Anybody else from your groups?
This is Catherine. I think for me with Christelle and Reagan, my aha moment was about, even if you're not in a position to be job searching at the moment, how important it is if a recruiter does reach out to you is to keep that connection, start that conversation, make sure you're constantly networking on LinkedIn, stay really relevant. Because there might be a time when you will need to job search and you don't want to be behind the 8 ball on that. So that was a really good takeaway I got.
Yes. I actually did a bunch of research on clients. This has been several years ago now. And from that, I came up with a term, I call it ARFO, right? Which is an acronym, always ready for opportunity. And it's this notion that I have my ducks in a row. My resume is updated. My LinkedIn profile is updated. My skills are current. I have what is needed to move to the next level. And so what happens in those situations is I've sort of energetically said to the universe, that's a little woo-woo, sorry, but that's about as far as I go into woo-woo, I promise. But you're kind of saying to the universe, I'm open for opportunity. I'm always ready. Here I am. What I have seen over and over again is when I have clients who know they're not up to date, they know they haven't updated their resume in forever. They know that they need that certification or that re-upping of a credential or whatever, and they haven't done it. They are like this, and a recruiter or 2 call and they're like, no, I can't talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. And so then the door just sort of starts to close and other recruiters don't reach out to them. So, the analogy that I use is Noah didn't wait until it started raining. He got out there in the sunshine, was building that ark. And that's what you want to do with your network. You don't want to wait until you need it, because then you may be starting from scratch. Ready when you need it. So what's the rest of that? So you're not starting from nothing. Yes, right? Because, if you put out, and this is something I push with my clients, if you give that steady stream of effort, low, maybe an hour or 2 a week on your networking, your LinkedIn profile, all of that, you will be so much further along, even with just an hour a week, than you would be if you didn't put that time in. So super important. Do we have one more comment in the groups?
I don't know. I had a question actually in our breakout group. We were talking about like further on what you're saying. It's difficult to figure out how to continue the connections on LinkedIn. Like, for example, I was on another call yesterday and it was a really good conversation, and there were a few of us that identified and wanted to connect. Right now I'm doing career pivot and I'm busy and everything, but a lot of times, once you're back into the job, you find a job and everything, everybody knows you should continue to network and do what you just said, but it's on LinkedIn, it's kind of awkward to, unless you have something very specific that you want to talk to the people in your group. How do you continue that so that you continue to Teresa had mentioned in our group breakout that she kind of reaches out and just checks in on people, but is there other things that we could be doing?
Yeah, so I really look at it from the perspective of providing value to the other person and kind of putting myself secondary in this conversation. Even if if you're networking for a job, make it 80% about the other person. So is there an opportunity to, hey, I was thinking of you. I just read this really great business book or this article, or I found this new site, or, hey, are there maybe, let's just say 5 people, 5 women in your network that need to hear about Ellevate. So you could just do, hey, I want to let you know about this great group that I belong to. Here's what I've gotten out of it, right? So looking for opportunities like that, or hey, just wanted to reach out. You can, if you keep your eye on the birthdays, the anniversaries, the job changes, which they notify you of, there's a great opportunity. So rather than just saying happy birthday, maybe happy birthday and a question. How's it going? I see you've been at such and such a company for 6 months now. How's it going? How do you like your new job? Just whatever's appropriate. You got to spend a moment on their profile to come up with your question, but you can do that. Does that help?
It does.
Yeah, look for
And
opportunities to provide value. Yeah.
and especially for a job search, like what kind of good questions would be to follow up if you haven't talked to the people in a couple of years, but you did work with them or something along those lines. So
Yeah, so what I do is, and I'll let me pull up now's a good time to pull up my profile because I want to show you how I do this. All right, so one of the things that I do when I do and I go on 15 minutes twice a week. I will admit I have an assistant who does all my posts for me, so I'm cheating a little bit when I say 15 minutes twice a week. But what I do during that time is I look to see who sent me a message, and then that's first, and then next I go into my network. And when I go into my network, the first thing I do over here, hi, Cindy already. Yay. And Donna, I think, is in here too. So you guys are on it. Love it. Okay, so I go over here into connections and I look to see, so this is for new people, right? So people that you've either asked them to connect with you or they've asked you to connect with them. I look to see who's most recent. See, I've got it sorted by that. So I can go down here. I can go over, okay, Almira. All right, she's connected to me, and she actually wants to sell me something, but she has reached out to me, but I haven't. So I'm probably going to say, Elmira, thanks for reaching out. Hey, I don't need I don't need your assistance right now because she wants to be a VA, and I already have one. But yeah, she's a VA. So I'm going to look at what they've said. So somebody maybe down here I've never communicated to them at all. Now here it is. Thanks for connecting. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to support you. So that's for the new people. What you could do for folks that you haven't reached out to in a while would be something like, hey, Sue, how I see you've been at such and such a company for a year now. How's it going? Right. So I might start with something like that. I like to think of this as you are starting to build these relationships like you would a dating relationship, because I think I have a real issue with people who ask me to connect with them, and this person unfortunately is one of those, initially reaches out to me and then immediately tries to sell me something, right? So in a dating relationship, that's like, hey, nice to see you, glad to meet you, let's get married. Maybe moving it a little fast, right? So I like to do, like, okay, first base, second base, third base before we get to marriage, right? So how do you like your new job? And then if they're responding to me and we're getting some energy going here, some movement back and forth, then I might say, hey, I'd love to catch up with you, and let you know what I've been up to, and hear more about what you're doing. Could we schedule a time to chat, whether that's a Zoom call, whether that's a coffee meeting, if you guys are close to each other geographically. But I like to take it that way. And this function, this recently added, really helps me to kind of keep track of that, because I can see what I've already said with them. I can see where we're at in terms of building that relationship. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Oh, I had a question, and then you may have some more questions for me. There was a question about do we have to have a picture, and the answer is quite simply yes. You must have a picture. End of story. And it needs to be just your head, no dogs, no cats, no sheep, unless you're a sheep herder, and then that which case have a sheep. But for most of us, we're not going to have it. And we want it to be, I call it the crowded restaurant test. That picture needs to be such that someone could find me in a crowded restaurant based on that picture. And I say that because that's actually what happened. I was at a Panera one day, and we had met through LinkedIn, and she couldn't see. I was like right there, and I was going, and she couldn't find me. I thought maybe it's time to update my picture. I also wanted to show you, and I apologize, this is the nose thing. I wanted to show you, notice the heading, right? So this, or the background photo rather, I'm sorry. One of the new things I've started doing with some of my clients is instead of just putting a picture back there, I'm putting some marketing language up there. So what could that look like for you? You know, I'm an expert in, you know, bringing strengths in, or something like that. Again, you have to think about that overt to covert continuum. How open can I be about that? But this is just done on Canva. So if you have any experience with Canva, I find it extraordinarily user-friendly and fun, quite frankly. Now my VA added the QR code. I don't know how to do that, but it's very easy to do that. The other question I got was a little bit of confusion about the headline versus the job title. So I'm going to try to clear that up. So this is your headline. Okay. Now notice it's 3 lines, right? Because I'm using pretty much all 220 characters. So I've got kind of job titles that people might search for someone like me, right? Master resume writer, certified executive and leadership development coach, etc. So that's my heading. And then I may very well have my job title. So let's say I have a job and I'm the marketing director. I could start with marketing director, Procter & Gamble, right? But I want to go further than that. I don't want to stop there. You know, expertise in social media marketing, bringing, you know, some kind of digital strategies to Fortune 500 clients, that kind of thing. Now, Joanna, did that you had said you were still a little confused. I want to get a feed from you if you think I've answered that question.
Yeah, for me, you have. I always was wondering if that was really meant for, you know, current title, or, you know, I've seen people who don't have their current title there at all, and, you know, what the purpose of that space was. But it makes sense to use as much as you can to get the information you want out.
Right. I did a consult a couple weeks ago with a woman, and I said, because I always look at their LinkedIn profile and write down some things that I have issues with. And she had like curious, creative, and something else in there. And I'm like, honey, sweetheart, nobody's going to be searching for curious. So that you've wasted that space, right? You haven't taken advantage of that. You want to think like a recruiter. So if I'm, you know, or in my case, a potential client, these are the kind of things that they're going to be searching on. All right. Any other questions related to a profile that would be helpful for me to be able to show you something while I've got my profile up before we go to our next question? So we're almost at it.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Donna.
I had a quick question about the header. So if I'm like looking to segue into like a job that's very similar to my current role, like as a copywriter, and we do like creative strategy, would it be okay to put like copywriter, creative strategist, if that's like a role that I kind of want to get into?
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of times, let's see if I can verbalize this appropriately. A lot of times what you want to get into is stuff that you're already doing. You maybe just want to do more of it. You want to be more focused on that. And so if you put that in your heading, and let's say you don't want your current employer to know what you're up to, they're not going to think a thing of that, because you are in fact doing that thing now. You want to do more of it in the next job. But you're not going to be, it's not a tell if you put it into your heading now.
I have a quick question about, for those of us who've been laid off and you're in that job hunting period. You were saying earlier about, like, in the experience section, you can kind of leave that job open for a little while, but at about 6 months, you probably want to close it out. Is there, in that time period when you go to close it out, should you be putting in that you're freelancing, or how do you manage that gap in time while you're still job hunting?
Good question. So I wouldn't necessarily go a full 6 months. I'm just saying, you can get by for a month or two if somebody says, hey, I see that you still work at Procter & Gamble. You're like, oh, actually, I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile. I did leave them. So you get a little bit of a break. I would not do that on the resume because that is considered a legal document. So you do need to be much more accurate on there. Now, in terms of the consulting piece, when I have that conversation with my clients, it's about, do you have substantive, are you actually consulting? Now, maybe you're doing it for free for some family members. Don't care. I care about the substance of the work. Are you doing legitimate consulting work that you can talk about? Because otherwise it's going to smell, and they're going to sniff it out pretty easily. And as I said, you also have that opportunity. I don't know if I can show you. Let's see if I can do. Oh, here we go. Okay. You can see that. So there is a way to add a career break. That's a fairly recent feature within the last 6 months or so, I think. I don't know. I'm kind of agnostic about that one. I don't love the thing around the picture that says open to work. And the reason that I don't love it is because recruiters who would be kind of the recipients of that, they don't care whether you're open to work or not. They're looking for the right candidate. So you can do all the back end stuff, set up your job searches, indicate that you're open to work on the back end where it's not seen by everyone. And frankly, even if you don't do that, a recruiter is going to reach out to you if you're the right candidate, regardless of, they actually probably kind of want you to love your current job and be employed, right? So I'm just not a fan of the open to work thing, but that's my personal opinion. All right. Joanna, talk to me. Do we have time to do another breakout?
I think maybe we skip the breakout and just have you talk about what's on your last couple of slides, because I do think the usage of time on LinkedIn, like how you're actually using your LinkedIn.
Yes.
I actually had one question before.
Yes.
When you were talking about like open to work and such, I have a unique situation where I was working at a job for the last 2 years, but it was not in a field that I want to go into. I don't put it on my resume, mainly because it doesn't really add any value. But if someone asks me, what have you been doing? I can, in an interview, I can say, I've been doing this work. How does that not smell is really what I'm trying to say. Because
so the work that you've been doing is off brand?
Yes, it's off brand, and I only stopped working there about 6-7 months ago, and I'm trying to get back into a pivot where I was trying to do anyways when I started working at that job. It just, you have to have a job. So what I was advised by one HR generalist who I went to, he said that, I do a lot of volunteer work. So the way I work it out on my resume is I list 2 out of the ones that I'm present with, where I do work in the field that I want to go into, so that's how I kind of show it on the resume, but I also put on my resume that it's volunteer. And LinkedIn, it's different because you see up until the last job. So you can see there's a gap between when I last actually worked. But when you look at my volunteer, and if you put the resume and the LinkedIn together, you see.
Right, which nobody's going to do because they're in a hurry. Everybody's got the attention span of a gnat. So with LinkedIn, you have a separate section called volunteering, and you want to do that. I will work with clients from time to time where they've just got all kinds of stuff smashed into their experience section, and it really screws it up, right? They've got board service and all these things. So we don't want to do that. The way that I would figure that out is I would think mentally of a scale, and I would put on one side of the scale, the irrelevance maybe of this work that you've had. Is that, how bad is that really? Or is it just kind of not good? Is it just neutral? And then on the other side, here's the potential backlash of not having a job. So I'm not employed, right? My sense is that probably when you think about it that way, having something on there is better than having nothing. But you know,
Really bad.
that's a value
So
call.
for me, it's really bad.
Okay.
So for me, it's really bad. It's just not something that if once I get my next job, I'm never mentioning that again. So.
Right. So it may be just a temporary thing, but that's the decision-making process I would go through to decide whether to have it on there. And the same thing is
Okay.
true with your LinkedIn profile or with your resume. You don't have to have anything on your resume that you don't want on there as long as what you have on there is 100% accurate.
Yes, okay. That, I just wanted to know if it gets heavily penalized just for the gap. You know, it's about a 1.5 year gap.
Yeah. So it could. And, you
Okay.
know, and you may not be able to massage the title to make it similar to what you want to
No.
do moving forward, but it still
No,
shows that it's-
unfortunately not. But I do have a 14-year at another company with several positions. So I was kind of advised that, said that it shows I can do longevity.
Right,
It just,
yeah, it's just the current thing. All right. Did we have any other questions in the chat before we get to slides? Oh, somebody asked about the experience of how far back. I assume we're still talking about LinkedIn. I go back about 20 years on resumes, a little bit further than most people recommend. I find that gives you enough kind of movement that people can see where you've come from. So I would go back about that far. You definitely don't want to be, if you're still got stuff from the 90s on there, might be time to take them off. And yes, okay. Let me show you real quick. Let's see, share screen, couple of real quick points here. Okay, now, so I talked about this when I showed you mine. Pixabay.com is where I get all my pictures from for my clients. So if I need any kind, or any of my social media for that matter, it's all royalty free. You can go that route and find something that's on brand for you. You know, put in whatever your job category is and see what pictures come up. Or you can take it to the next step and do something with Canva and really stand out. Always write in first person on your LinkedIn profile. It's like you're telling a story. Make sure that you have content in your sections. I'm seeing increasingly a lot of folks just put the name of the company, job title, dates. I really want you to have achievements in there. That's a separate topic when we get to resumes, but you want to have achievements be the center focus of your resume. You want achievements to be the center focus of your LinkedIn profile. We talked about the heading, massage job titles. Yeah, one more thing is don't upload your resume. So that is a tool that is available to you on LinkedIn. The reason I don't recommend it is I want you to customize your resume every time you send it out. And if you're going to have a slightly generic resume sitting on LinkedIn for recruiters to grab, what I would rather you do is have this amazing profile that makes them want to reach out to you. You get to hear more about the job. You get a copy of the job description always. And then you customize that resume, and that's what you send to them. And a couple more things. Your resume or your LinkedIn profile should never be a cut and paste of your resume. Please, please, please. And yeah, increasingly, it's not what I see on people's LinkedIn profiles that is negatively impacting, and this is resumes, but your LinkedIn profile. It's what's not there, right? So it's lack of content on your LinkedIn profile. There's not enough keywords for the recruiters to find you from. We talked about the upkeep annually at least. I want you to have at least 500 connections. Your footprint is too small otherwise, and it'll show, I have 387 connections or whatever. Once you get to that magic number of 500, it just says 500 plus. And every time you add a connection, you're becoming second connection, so one-offs with all of that person's connections. So that's what I call your footprint on LinkedIn, is who you're connected to, who they're connected to. And that's how you get seen by recruiters and others that would be in a position to hire you. All right, did we have any final questions?
I just have a question. Is this going to, the recording of this, is it going to be sent to all the participants?
Yes, great question. It's going to be uploaded to the event page, so where you went to register, and I'll include a link to that page again in our follow-up email, so you'll know where to find it.
We didn't get to the second set of questions, but this is what I wanted you to do, was to have a discussion around regular time on LinkedIn. And as you heard me mention earlier, I spend 15 minutes twice a week. So it's not a huge chunk of time. And even if you're job searching, it might be, an hour 3 times a week or something like that. But considering, especially if you're unemployed and conducting a full-time job search, that's not a chunk of time. And it's really important to come up with strategies that make sense for how to use that time. Because as Joanne, I think you and I were talking about it before we got on here, is it's one thing to say I'm going to get on LinkedIn, but for a lot of people it's like, okay, I'm here now. I wonder what I should do. So having a plan in place is really important, and then adjusting that plan accordingly, as you kind of evaluate it, maybe on a monthly basis, what's getting traction for you, what's not getting traction, what do you need to do more or less of.
Fantastic. Lisa, thank you so much. I'm sorry that we've run out of time. I know that we could talk about this for hours. I feel like there's so many questions and so many tips that we can all learn from you, but thank you so much for being here with us. Next week at our roundtable, we're talking about figuring out your next career move, which is, I think, a great way to follow up this convo. If you are not sure how to, what that next move is yet, go to that session. It'll help you kind of figure out this LinkedIn part and what you want your LinkedIn profile to actually say. So I hope we see you there. The recording will be sent around. And thanks everyone for being here. Thank you again, Lisa.
Nice, you're welcome.
Take care, everybody. Bye.